Hi and welcome to another episode of ID Cyber Sessions. I'm Steve and as always this is Alice and we both work at ID Cyber.
Today we are delighted to be talking with Dr. Emma Philpott, who is the CEO of the IASME Consortium. IASME partner with the NCSC to develop and deliver, among other things, the Cyber Essentials certification. Now, what I found interesting, Emma, is looking into your history is that your PhD is actually in material sciences, more specifically ceramic composition. And I was just interested about how you got into that field.
Yeah, so I did materials and I did ceramics, but then I went into nanomaterials and the sort of nano-bio interface. That was all great until there was a big financial crash, and then everybody stopped investing in nanomaterials because you need a lot of money to get started with nanomaterials. So I couldn't, what was I going to do? And we'd just moved to Malvern and everyone I met was doing cybersecurity. And I thought, well, how hard can that be? But it was, just meeting lots of people, finding out the challenges in cybersecurity. And it just, it caught my imagination because there's so much to do. There's so many gaps. And my speciality had always been helping small companies, with emerging technologies. And it really became obvious to me that small companies in cybersecurity weren't being helped. It was really the domain of the large organizations. And so I just thought, right, well, let's get all the small companies together and we can do some amazing stuff. And then here we are.
So that was was that the Malvern Cybersecurity Hub? Was that the name of it?
Yes, it was the Malvern Cybersecurity Cluster.
How exactly did you go from that to being involved with IASME itself?
So through the Malvern Cybersecurity Cluster, it was just literally a free meetup for organizations that were working in cybersecurity, just coming together, sharing, best practice and talking to each other. And one day, these two guys turned up who had started a project to help small companies in certifying to Cyber Essentials. And they were both academics and they wanted to build a company around it. And they just asked me for some business planning advice. So I talked to them about how to set up a company and how to grow it. And I was like, oh, this is a good idea. And I was saying things like, who are your competitors? And they were like, oh, no, we don't have any competitors. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. So then I just bossily pushed my way in and, I'll help. And it really grew from there. But it was, the reason it was successful was because it was at the right time. So much success, I think, in business is to do with luck. And so it was luck that we started doing that at the same time that NCSC were thinking, how can we have a cybersecurity certification that's suitable for companies of all sizes? So it was just right time, right place, really. And then it just grew from there. But when IASME first started, there was just two of us working for IASME. We had no salary because we had no income. And then suddenly we were a pilot, accreditation body for Cyber Essentials. So, that was really lucky, really.
Brilliant. So it's nearly a decade later. The organisation has around 100 employees now, and it's a partner with the NCSC. So how did the organisation develop in that time then?
So to start with, we were one of two pilot certifications. And, if we got one certification in a month, we would be like, yay, wow. And then, of course, it grew. By the time it was 2019, there was 5 different organisations delivering Cyber Essentials. But it was getting really complicated because the 5 different organisations all had slightly different ways of delivering it and slightly different, ideals for where the scheme was going. So NCSC wanted one delivery partner. So rather than having to deal with a whole load of competitors in one room, they wanted, a real partner that they could develop the scheme with. And, you hear that from the government and you think, yeah, real partner. And so we bid for it, and luckily we won the bid. And, I have to say, we have been very, very surprised. NCSC have treated us very much like a partner. They have an idea and they discuss it with us, and they really do develop think in partnership, although I wouldn't have believed it maybe all those years ago. But we started being the sole delivery partner on the 1st of April 2020, of course, just as lockdown was hitting. And although mentally I knew that we were going from 45% of the market to 100% of the market overnight, I wasn't prepared. I don't think any of us was prepared for the overwhelming amount of work that suddenly landed on us at the same time as moving to home working, exactly the same time. And so suddenly we were trying to recruit people. So we had 25 people in IASME at that point, but most of them were part-time, and a lot of people worked 1 day a week. So going from that to suddenly needing to recruit. And how do you recruit in that first lockdown? It was really hard. So we said to all our employees, have you got anyone at home? I mean, literally, any family members, any friends, any kids that we could, obviously of the age to work. And we just hired everyone's family. And,
wow.
But to this day, we still have loads of family members working for IASME. And it worked out really well. But of course, when you're talking to the government, they're like, you can't just hire everyone's family. It's like, no, it's all right. It was the only thing we could do. So, we have continued to grow very, very fast. Probably a little bit of an uncomfortable rate. But the thing that really drives us is the excitement of making a difference. So it's gone beyond Cyber Essentials now. So now we have Cyber Advisor, and of course we're passionate about trying to bring in more diversity from the sector. So we train up people with who are unemployed, who've got barriers to employment, and then we try and recruit a lot of them. We have grown very fast, and we've been through a few growing pains, but we're still going, and most of us are still friends, so that's really cool.
So you mentioned diversity there and the importance of that, and we actually have a couple of questions around that, but one in particular that I had is that in recent years there has been a real and much needed push for diversity in cybersecurity, and it's become less and less unusual to see a woman in a position of power within the industry. But you started with IASME around a decade ago, before a lot of those changes started coming in. So I just wondered, how did you find it being a woman coming into what was at the time a much more male-dominated field?
So I came from, although I was doing materials, I came from a defence background. So engineering and defence, when I first started work, I was usually the only woman, sometimes the only woman on site, usually the only woman in meetings. And so I kind of, I had a baptism of fire. I had many experiences which hopefully people don't go through today. And, there are many advantages of being different in a workplace, and that your voice is heard, but it can be very bruising. And I think in the case of young women today coming to cybersecurity, you can do it, but you have to often be tough, and that's not fair to ask of people. So I had been through all that, so it wasn't that different for me, because I had learned how to deal with it. But it shouldn't have to be like that. But it gets better as you get older, which again is wrong, but it is. I'm more confident and I'm older now, and so I don't really see it so much. I mean, I can obviously see that most of the people in the room are men, but I don't get the discrimination that I used to. And I thought that's because, maybe it's gone away. But my daughter is in the cybersecurity sector, and she gets all that stuff that I used to get. So it's not because it's gone away, it's because I'm, older and have learned how to be just ignoring it, I think. So it's wrong, and the only way to change it is to support women, mentor women, make sure that they're not hidden barriers to women joining groups and teams. And it's just, there's subtleties where a team will say, we want them to fit in with us. We want to recruit someone that fits in with us. And in one way, that's okay. But in another way, if fitting in means, finds the maybe sexist jokes that we find funny also funny, That's not okay. So it's kind of a complicated thing on multiple levels. When I was in the sixth form, I went on a Women in Engineering weekend to try and encourage more women to do engineering. That was many years ago, a long time ago. And there is still very, very few women doing engineering. So if the engineering sector has been trying this for so many years and still don't really find it very easy, it just shows what a complicated and difficult problem it is. But so IASME has 50% women, and we have men and women in every team, and we have 50% of people who say they're neurodivergent, which is, was even a surprise to me. And we have quite a lot of people with physical disabilities or long-term health problems. And, I honestly believe that is what makes us great. That's what makes us a successful company. And that's what makes us profitable. It's not immediately obvious, but, just in terms of when we have a problem or when we have something that we're competing for, the variety of ideas and thoughts are quite astounding. The jaw-dropping moments when we have a problem that I really can't think of a way around. And there'll be jaw-dropping moments from just the different thought processes around the room. Really amazing. So I think, diversity gives you power, but it's a really hard one.
Yeah, so staying on the subject of diversity, you actually won an award recently at the National Cyber Awards, is that correct? Yeah? Excellent. So what is IASME's approach to ensuring an inclusive environment?
So we're on a learning curve, the same as everyone, and we have put things in place in the past that, looking back, were just ridiculous. So our very first training course we did for neurodivergent unemployed adults, we hired the whole first cohort, and we put them all in a department all by themselves to do technical things, assuming they'd all be technical, and we had a welfare manager to support them. That was all completely rubbish, because just because they're neurodivergent doesn't mean to say they have the same skills or the same, aptitude or anything. So now we have neurodivergent people all over the company, and our welfare manager supports everybody, because lots of people need support, whether they're neurodivergent or have a physical disability or just because they're having a bad day. Over COVID, we had people who were bereaved or had long COVID or just found it difficult, and they needed support as well. So, we've realised that it's not neurodivergent and non-neurodivergent, or women and men, or people with a physical disability and those without. Everyone is a complex individual, and everybody needs different support at different times. So we try and give everybody the opportunity to have a welfare manager. We have a counsellor that we refer people to, whether someone had a bereavement or something traumatic happened to them. It's in our own interests, because rather than them then being off sick or depressed, we help them get better quickly. But also we have things called, we call them listening forums, where we just have them throughout the year, where not me, someone else, usually the HR manager, will just get people together and just say, tell us what you think. How can we make things easier for you? Or what are you finding difficult in your workplace? And often things will come up where we haven't thought about it. The obvious ones are lighting and sound, but just little things that we can change quite easily, and they make a massive difference to people's lives. And often it will be someone who's probably neurodivergent who is finding it difficult. But then when we've changed it, lots of people say, oh, I didn't realise I was finding that difficult, but I was. So, for example, the light, one of our neurodivergent members of staff was finding the strip lights just too much. So we switched them all off and we gave everyone a desk lamp. And lots of people have said that their migraines are less now. But they wouldn't have known to say that was the lighting. So, really what we do is we just try and we keep trying to make things better and better. And we also try and always question ourselves. So it's all very well saying, oh yeah, we're a very, diverse company, but we're still doing things wrong, and we just need to just keep trying to get better, really.
I think that's a really fresh but valuable way to ensure inclusivity. I think that's wonderful. And you've actually recently announced your community projects, which are extending beyond IASME itself and actually into the community. And these are targeting areas of high deprivation, essentially anyone who's experiencing some sort of barrier to becoming part of the cybersecurity industry. Can you tell us more about these?
So when you look at the cybersecurity industry, it's very easy to say, oh, there's lots of men and not very many black people. Those are the things that come immediately to, it's very obvious when you look at a group of cybersecurity professionals. But then there's a lot of very subtle differences. So we did a review of all our assessors, and they are more likely than other similar sectors to have degrees and come from, the South and London areas. And there are these little subtle indications that indicate that it tends to not be people from areas of high deprivation. And then, of course, there are also sectors of people that always struggle to get into employment. For example, people coming out of the care sector, people returning from having time off, having kids, but just all sorts of people that find the structure often of work difficult. Whereas when you work for a small cybersecurity company, you can be incredibly flexible. You can either be in a job where you're planning things, like if you're doing instant exercising, for example, you don't have to work full time. You can have a very flexible job. And a lot of cybersecurity jobs can work from home. So it's a really great sector to bring people into that maybe find it difficult to work in very standard, 9-to-5 jobs. So this is really our big plan for next year. It's, so many people say, I want to work in cybersecurity, but how do I get in there? And it's really hard because lots of small companies would like to grow, but they need to charge their people to grow. They can't, unlike some of the big companies, they can't have loads of trainees that they're paying the salary and they can't charge them out. Yeah. So what we're hoping to do, and we haven't had permission from NCSC to do this yet, but we're writing a paper about it, is we're hoping to think of how we can use the scheme, Cyber Essentials, Cyber Advisor, instant exercising, to bring in new people into the industry from zero. So maybe, school leavers. How can we have a whole career path and training plan for them to start in the industry and immediately have a job role where they can be charged out? That would be absolutely brilliant. And then you can take them all the way through. Maybe they'll pop out the other end of Cyber Essentials as a pen tester or a security architect or an instant response expert. And, it would just free up, hopefully, that pipeline of people coming into the industry.
That's a great way of looking at it. Again, it's just, as Alice said, it's just a fresh look at the problems that are there, and just it's a nice friendly way of looking at it, and a way of... so we're talking about innovations there. So Cyber Advisor, Cyber Baseline, is there anything else that's coming down the pipeline that you can talk about over the next year or next few years? I
think the next year in particular will be focusing on trying to get more people in, because as Cyber Essentials grows, so Cyber Essentials has grown a lot this year, 25%, and a lot of that growth has been in Cyber Essentials Plus. And at the same time, we're getting a lot of feedback from certification bodies to say that they're struggling to recruit for Cyber Essentials Plus. Some of them are also struggling to recruit for Cyber Essentials. So it's kind of a perfect storm, isn't it, where an industry, a certification scheme is growing really fast. So last year, we've seen the scheme starting to be adopted by a lot of large organisations asking for it for their supply chain. That's caused this growth. And we think that that is going to be even more so next year. So we need the capacity, and we're not going to be able to get the capacity unless we find a way to develop more Cyber Essentials Plus assessors. So I think next year is very much going to be, how can we break down the barriers of bringing more people in, getting them into Cyber Essentials Plus assessors? And then, of course, with the Cyber Advisor, NCSC have got big plans about how small companies, to become secure, they are going to need help. They've tried, guidance and advice, and that works to a certain extent. but when it comes to it, they need help. And to get help, they're going to need loads and loads and loads and loads of cyber advisors. So I think there's big plans to try and grow that as a support system to all the micro and small companies out there. So yeah, that's what we're going to be focusing on next year. There'll be some really exciting stuff, I think.
Excellent.
I think that's a really worthwhile goal as well. I think the summary of this entire interview has just been about the need for more voices in the industry, and I think that would be a great way to achieve it. Just considering the general themes of this entire interview, which has really been about kind of diversity and inclusivity, are there any kind of final points that you'd like to make just on that theme if other companies are wondering what they themselves could do?
I mean, there's lots of great stuff out there. I think the big barrier for us is for organisations to realise that getting more diverse and bringing in new people is not just because it's a nice thing. You know, we don't do it to be charitable. We do it because it makes us a better company. And so it's just trying to get that message over. And it's really hard for some organisations to believe that. But it's true. You know, we are living proof of that. So I think it's really, when somebody has maybe an employee that's struggling, rather than just saying, how can we manage them out, you know, which is a commercial decision, it's talking to the employee and trying to find out why they are finding it difficult to do that job. Because I completely believe that nobody goes to work every day to do a bad job. So trying to find out, you know, why are you late every day? Or why are you not delivering the reports that I've asked you to do? And quite often it will turn out to be a neurodivergent issue or some issue with their family life that you didn't know about. And particularly with neurodivergence, they probably didn't know about. We've got all sorts of people in IASME who maybe were finding something difficult, and it turns out they've got ADHD. They didn't know, we didn't know, but then once they understand that they have ADHD, they can read up on it, they can talk to their GP, and they can start to put things in place to be able to do a good job. And that helps them. You know, otherwise you manage them out, they get another job, and the same thing happens. So it's really a plea to people that when someone isn't doing a good job, find out why and try and support them to improve that, rather than just, you know, managing them out and they're someone else's problem.
Again, that's a great message. So on that, I'd like to thank Emma for today. And we also provide Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus services. So if you want to hear more about that, you can visit us at idcybersolutions.com. Thanks again. Bye-bye.